You're listening to Systemic Error Podcast. The failure was designed.
The walls close in on Trump as voter backlash triggers a reckoning, based on an article by D. Earl Stephens. Trump owns the war, and the blowback. The source article is about Trump's Iran war colliding with a midterm map House control, Senate uncertainty, public opposition, and the prospect that the administration will try to sabotage the results if the count goes against it. That is the context. The deeper story is simpler, and uglier one man is using state power to manufacture chaos, and the people around him are helping him pretend that chaos is policy. Power has a name. The first question is always who actually holds the power. In this story, it is Trump, not Washington, not the Middle East, not political turmoil. Trump made the decision to escalate. Trump is the one threatening to destroy infrastructure in response to attacks on ships. Trump is the one turning military force into a personal loyalty test. That matters because the article, for all its rage, still treats the war partly like a political condition that happened to the country. It did not happen. It was chosen. There is no mystery here, only hierarchy. The president commands the war, and everyone else is forced to live inside it. The war has a political owner. The source is right to identify Trump's Iran escalation as a gift to Democrats. But the real point is not that Democrats may benefit electorally. The point is that Trump is once again converting institutional power into public damage and calling it strength. The article notes that the war is unpopular, that support is low, and that independents are heavily opposed. That is not a sign of a healthy democratic correction. It is evidence of how far the administration is willing to move against public opinion when it believes force will substitute for legitimacy. Trump is not trying to persuade the country. He is trying to overwhelm it. This is the pattern. He creates a crisis, then asks his base to admire the size of the wreckage. The war is not a strategic project. It is a domination project. Republicans are not confused. The piece correctly targets the Republican apparatus, and that deserves to be stated plainly. The party is not baffled by Trump. It is enabling him. The Senate hearing with Pete Hegseth shows the machinery at work, a loyalist cabinet figure, a compliant party, no definable mission, and a demand for more money anyway. That is not incompetence in the innocent sense. It is institutional cowardice dressed up as military seriousness. Hegseth is not there because he is competent. He is there because he performs a submission in a way Republican men understand: loud, vulgar, aggressive, empty. He is a symbol of the party's decay into theatrical masculinity and contempt for accountability. Susan Collins plays a different role, but it is part of the same system. The article nails her habit of public concern followed by private accommodation. That is not moderation. It is a management style for protecting power while pretending to notice abuse. Republican officials do not need to agree on substance when the shared objective is preserving the administration's freedom to damage the country. The Democrats are not the story, but they are the vehicle. The source frames the war as a political gift to Democrats, and that is probably true, but Democrats should not mistake a Republican collapse for a governing message. They did not cause Trump's war, and they do not get credit simply because he is making himself radioactive. Their real job is to be the institutional vehicle against authoritarian politics, not to pose as a respectable opposite of Republican arson. If the public turns against Trump, Democrats should use that opening to confront the power structure directly: executive lawlessness, war without a mission, sabotage of democratic process, and a Republican Party that treats all of it as acceptable as long as it flatters their own resentments. They should not respond with technocratic caution while the White House threatens to break the vote and expand the war. That is how opposition becomes background noise. Blame belongs upward. One of the few things the source article does well is refuse the usual fog of responsibility. It does not pretend the war is a tragic misunderstanding. It identifies decision-makers, enablers, and beneficiaries. That is the right frame. Too much political coverage hides responsibility in passive language. Tensions rise, mistakes are made, concerns are voiced. None of that applies here. Trump escalated. Republicans covered. Loyalists defended. The consequences will land elsewhere: on troops, on civilians, on voters, on the price of basic goods, on institutions already weakened by years of contempt. The article also gets at a larger truth by pointing to Trump's likely next move: attacking the vote. That is the connective tissue between war and domestic authoritarianism. Foreign conflict is not separate from democratic breakdown. It is one of the tools used to normalize emergency power, spectacle, and obedience. The pattern. This story is not mainly about Iran. And it is not mainly about polling. It is about a political order in which one faction is willing to treat violence as governance, lies as strategy, and election manipulation as self-defense. Trump owns the damage. Republicans enable it. Democrats inherit the burden of stopping it. That is the pattern the country keeps mistaking for turbulence. It is not turbulence. It is a governing method. You've been listening to Systemic Error, thanks to Alternet, for today's article, with the automated voice of Norman. Thanks for listening.